You made your decisions. You left me for Brian, thinking you were upgrading your life. How's that working out for you?" Her face flushed, anger and embarrassment mixing in her expression. "Marcus, I know I hurt you, but you don't have to be so cruel. I thought you were better than this." "Better than this?" I laughed. "You thought I was a failure, Olivia. You thought I wasn't good enough. Now you're here, begging me for help because your perfect life isn't so perfect after all. I owe you nothing." Just then, as if the universe wanted to drive the point home, Brian walked in. He must have followed her, because his timing was too perfect to be coincidental. He looked even worse than Olivia, disheveled, stressed, and clearly out of his depth. "Marcus," he said, trying to sound casual, but his voice was shaky. "Can we talk, man to man?" I stood up, walking around my desk to face him. "Man to man?" I echoed. "You mean the same way you talked to me while sleeping with my wife behind my back?" "Save it, Brian." He winced but pressed on. "Look, we made mistakes, but Olivia and I are in a tough spot, and we thought maybe you'd be willing to help us out, just a loan, something small." I shook my head, laughing again. "Unbelievable. You betrayed me, lied to me, and now you want me to bail you out? The audacity is impressive, I'll give you that." Brian's face turned red, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "You don't have to be a jerk about it, Marcus." I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "I don't owe you anything, Brian. You made your bed, now lie in it." Olivia reached out, her voice pleading. "Please, Marcus, we're desperate." I turned to her, my voice calm but cold. "Desperation doesn't erase betrayal, Olivia. You both made your choices, and now you're living with them. This conversation is over." Without another word, I walked to the door and opened it, gesturing for them to leave. They stood there for a moment, stunned, before shuffling out, their heads hanging low. As the door closed behind them, I felt a sense of closure. They had thought they could manipulate me, guilt me into helping them, but I was no longer the man they thought they knew. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about standing tall, knowing my worth, and refusing to let the people who betrayed me pull me down. And as I sat back at my desk, I couldn't help but smile. They thought they'd broken me, instead they'd set me free. The beauty of betrayal is that it has a way of turning on itself. Brian and Olivia thought they could escape the mess they created by sticking together. But the cracks in their relationship began to grow into full-blown fractures. It was almost poetic to watch them unravel under the weight of their own decisions. The first sign came from a mutual acquaintance, Carla, who always seemed to have her ear to the ground. She called me one afternoon, her voice practically dripping with gossip. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this," she began. "What now, Carla?" I replied, already amused by her dramatic tone. "It seems Brian has been, how should I put this, seeing someone else?" I laughed, a genuine belly laugh that I hadn't experienced in a while. "Seeing someone else? Are you serious?" "Dead serious," she said. "Apparently, Olivia caught him texting another woman. Some young thing from his new job, if you can believe it." I shook my head. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Brian, the man who had betrayed me with Olivia, was now betraying her in the exact same way. Karma didn't just catch up with them, it ran them over. The fallout was swift. Olivia, who had always been so smug and self-assured, was now the one blindsided. From what I heard, she confronted Brian in a spectacularly public fashion, screaming at him in the middle of a cafe. He tried to brush it off, Carla continued, relishing every detail. Said it wasn't a big deal, and Olivia completely lost it. She threw her coffee at him. I could almost picture it, Olivia, who had once gloated about leaving me for a better man, now reduced to throwing lattes in public. It was almost too good to be true. But it didn't stop there. The woman Brian had been texting wasn't just a random fling. She was someone he had met at his new job, and she was everything Olivia wasn't. Young, carefree, and completely uninterested in settling down. Brian, being the impulsive idiot he was, had convinced himself she was worth risking everything for. Olivia, of course, didn't take the betrayal quietly. She demanded answers, demanded Brian fix the mess he'd created. But Brian was Brian, and fixing things was never his strong suit. Instead, he doubled down, blaming Olivia for their financial troubles and accusing her of being too demanding. Their arguments became the talk of the town. Neighbors reported hearing shouting matches late into the night, and more than one friend told me about awkward encounters where Olivia would burst into tears mid-conversation. At one point, Brian moved out, leaving Olivia in their dingy apartment with no way to pay the rent. She called me again during this time, her voice shaking with anger and desperation. "Marcus," she started, not bothering with pleasantries. "You were right about Brian. He's a liar and a cheat, and I can't believe I trusted him." I leaned back in my chair, letting her rant. I could have offered her sympathy or said something conciliatory, but where was the fun in that? "Olivia," I said after she paused for breath, You made your choice. You chose Brian over me, thinking he was the better man. How's that working out for you?" She was silent for a moment, and I could hear her breathing hard on the other end of the line. Finally, she muttered, "I don't need your lectures, Marcus. I need your help." "No," I replied firmly. "What you need is to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions." She hung up on me after that. From what I gathered later, Brian didn't come back. He moved in with his new girlfriend, who eventually realized he was just as unreliable as Olivia had. Last I heard, he was couch surfing, unable to hold down a job or a relationship. Olivia, on the other hand, was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She had no job, no savings, and no one left to turn to. Her family had distanced themselves from her, tired of her constant drama, and even her friends had started to drift away. The very life she had fought so hard to build with Brian had turned to ash. And I didn't have to lift a finger. Karma had done all the work for me. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing that people like Olivia and Brian inevitably destroy themselves. They think they're clever, think they can manipulate and betray their way into happiness, but life has a way of humbling them. And while they were busy tearing each other apart, I was thriving. My work was flourishing, my life was peaceful, and my future was brighter than ever. The best revenge, they say, is living well, and by that measure I had won. The funny thing about hitting rock bottom, when you're the one betrayed, humiliated, and discarded, is that you find out just how resilient you really are. For me, the divorce wasn't the end, it was the beginning. A fresh start disguised as devastation. Olivia and Brian had burned the bridge behind them, but I was already building a better one ahead. After the divorce, I made one promise to myself. I wouldn't let their betrayal define me. I would rise above it, not just for the sake of revenge, but for the sake of my own peace. And that's exactly what I did. The first step was investing in myself. I upgraded my apartment to a sleek penthouse in the heart of the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and a view that reminded me, every day, how far I'd come. It wasn't just a place to live, it was a statement, a symbol of my new life. My career, already stable, began to flourish in ways I hadn't imagined. Freed from the stress of Olivia's constant criticisms and Brian's backstabbing, I threw myself into my work with renewed focus. Clients noticed, new contracts poured in, my annual income skyrocketed, hitting $513,000 and climbing. And then there were the unexpected opportunities. My expertise and reputation in my field led to speaking engagements, partnerships, and investment offers. Every success felt like a quiet victory, a reminder that I was more than the man Olivia had underestimated. Socially, I began to rebuild as well. Old friends who had drifted away over the years reconnected. New friends entered my life, people who appreciated me for who I was, not what they could gain from me. I started attending events, networking with like-minded individuals, and even taking the occasional weekend trip just for fun. But the most significant change was internal. I learned to value myself in ways I never had before. For years, I had poured so much energy into keeping Olivia happy, trying to meet her impossible standards, that I had lost sight of my own worth. Now, I was reclaiming it. Therapy helped too. I won't pretend I did it all on my own. Talking to someone impartial, someone who could help me process the betrayal and the lingering anger, was invaluable. My therapist once told me, "Marcus, you're not responsible for other people's choices. You're only responsible for how you respond to them." Those words became my mantra. And then there was my creative side. I'd always dabbled in writing and photography, but now I had the time and energy to take it seriously. I started a blog, part personal journal, part professional insights, that quickly gained traction. People resonated with my story of rebuilding, of turning pain into progress. Every now and then I'd hear whispers about Olivia and Brian. Their downward spiral had become something of a cautionary tale among our old circle of friends. The latest updates were always the same: more debt, more drama, and more regret. "Marcus," a mutual friend once said over coffee, "I don't know how you're so calm about all this. If I were in your shoes, I'd be furious." I shrugged. "What's the point? They're living their karma. I don't need to add to it." And it was true. Watching them flounder while I thrived wasn't just satisfying, it was liberating. I didn't need to chase revenge or wallow in resentment. I was too busy living well. Still, there were moments of reflection. Late at night, staring out at the city lights from my penthouse, I'd think about everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. It hadn't been easy to move past, but I had done it. And in the process, I discovered a version of myself I didn't even know existed. Stronger, wiser, more confident. Life didn't stop throwing challenges my way, of course. It never does. But I faced each one with a clarity and resilience I never would have had before. Losing Olivia and Brian was painful, but in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. They hadn't just left, they'd freed me. Now, every day felt like a step forward. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And the best part? I didn't need anyone's validation to prove it. I had built a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who valued me, and filled with opportunities that excited me. My world was brighter, bigger, and better than anything Olivia and Brian could have imagined. And as far as I was concerned, the chapter with them was closed. This was my story now, and I was writing it exactly the way I wanted.